Hi everyone, I'm Will Burns from your Property Associates and welcome to another episode of Building Better Investors. We're starting a series off with CDM Mondays, and the aim of the series is, it's simple, is to help property investors, developers and sourcers, whether you're new or experienced, make better decisions by understanding what really happens from purchase through to completion, also known as the construction phase. In the last episode, we answered an important question, which was, does CDM apply to my project? And we established that CDM applies to construction work of all sizes, from relatively small refurbishments and extensions through to conversions and full developments. Now, in today's episode, last week we mentioned some of the duty holders. In today's episode, we're going to be taking that one step further by looking at all 5 of the duty holders under CDM, what their responsibilities are, and how their roles apply in the property world. So the first duty holder, what is a duty holder? A duty holder is simply a person or organisation that has specific legal responsibilities under the construction, design and management regulations. And the purpose of this is to make sure that responsibility for health and safety is clearly allocated throughout the project. It should be clear who is commissioning the work. It should be clear who is managing the design, who is managing the construction phase, and who is physically carrying out the work as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. So 5 main duty holders that property investors and developers need to understand are, first we have the client. The client is the person or organisation, and that's important. It's person or organisation the construction work is being carried out for. Within property, that could be an investor refurbishing a buy-to-let, develop completed conversion or a new build. It could be a limited company or an SPV that owns a property. So it's important to know the duties as a client. So the client has major influence over health and safety and how a project can be delivered, because they appoint the project team and they provide the time, information and the resources needed to complete the work. So, as I mentioned before, the client isn't expected to personally manage every trade or understand every technical detail. However, they must make suitable arrangements for managing the project by appointing people who are capable of carrying out their roles and responsibilities, and to make sure that other duty holders are fulfilling their responsibilities as well. Next up is the principal designer. So the principal designer is required on projects involving or likely to involve more than one contractor. They take the lead on health and safety during the pre-construction phase, and despite their title, they're not there just to simply produce drawings. Their job is to plan, manage, monitor and coordinate health and safety during the design process. So if there's any sort of R&D surveys that need to be carried out, or ground surveys, they'll be responsible for sort of coordinating that. They help identify risk and coordinate with designers where reasonably practical to eliminate or reduce risks before work begins on site. So the principal designer could be an architect, engineer or another suitably competent designer. But whoever is appointed must understand and accept the responsibilities that come with the role. Then the designers. Now a designer is anyone who prepares or changes a design, design drawing or specification or calculation for the project. So that can include an architect, a structural engineer, mechanical or electrical designers, interior designers, or even a design and build contractor. So, contractors who make decisions, design decisions as part of their work. Designers must consider how their designs can be constructed, used, maintained, altered, and eventually demolished safely. So we touched on that before, concept till demolition. They should eliminate foreseeable risks where possible, reduce or control risks that cannot be eliminated, and communicate any significant remaining risks to the rest of the project team. So after the principal designer and the designers, we have the principal contractor. And now, as with the principal designer, principal contractor is required when there's one or more involved in the project. So they take control of health and safety during the construction phase. Their role is to plan, manage, monitor, coordinate the work whilst it's being carried out. And that includes coordinating trades, controlling access to the site, providing inductions to the site, which is legal requirement, maintaining welfare facilities, legal requirement, consulting with workers, and making sure the construction phase plan is implemented and, importantly, kept up to date. On a typical property refurbishment, the main builder or main building contractor may be appointed as principal contractor. However, you should never assume that because someone calls themselves the main contractor, that they understand or have accepted the legal role of principal contractor. There's a big difference. So you have to make sure that the appointment needs to be clear. The person or company appointed must have the skills, knowledge, experience, and organisational capability needed to carry it out. Maybe a bit more expensive, but it would be worth it in the long run. And then after the principal contractors, we have the contractors. Contractors are individuals or businesses that carry out or manage the construction work, actually physically carry out the construction work. So that can include builders, electricians, plumbers, roofers, plasterers, decorators, and all other trades. So each one of them is responsible for managing and monitoring the work that's under their direct control. They must provide appropriate supervision, cooperate with the other duty holders, and make sure that their work does not put other trades or members of the public. It's really important as well. Make sure the public aren't at risk. And they must also follow the relevant parts of the construction phase plan and provide information about their risk associated with their work. So it's particularly important in property because even what appears to be a straightforward refurbishment will normally involve more than one contractor. So you may appoint one building company, but that company may bring in electricians, plumbers, roofers, and the other subcontractors required to complete the work. As I say, even on a smaller refurbishment up to developments, you usually do need sort of multiple trades. So the moment one or more is involved, or is reasonably foreseeable that one or more they may be involved, a principal designer and principal contractor both must be appointed. Now, for a commercial client such as an investor, developer, a limited company, SPV, or an individual carrying out for business purposes, construction work for business purposes, you do fall under as a commercial client. And here's a really another important part, and what most investors don't realise, that if the commercial client fails to appoint a principal designer or principal contractor when required, the legal responsibilities attached to the roles can fall back onto the client. So simply just appointing a builder and leaving them to get on with the project isn't actually enough. So each duty holder has their own responsibilities, but the commercial client remains responsible for making sure suitable arrangements are in place and that the project is being managed properly. Last time we mentioned domestic clients and that they had slightly different responsibilities, and they do. So as a domestic client, which we discovered was someone who's just having some DIY done on their home, and it's not connected to business, whilst CDM applies to the project, the duties normally they automatically pass down to the contractor on a single contractor project, or they automatically fall to the principal contractor where there is one or more contractor involved. So just as a reminder, the rules don't disappear on a domestic project. What changes is who carries out the client's legal duties. So for investors and developers carrying out work for business purposes, the commercial client duties apply in full. I'll reiterate that again because it's really important, because failing to comply with those duties can have serious consequences. Now, it's unlikely unless there's a major event, but the HSE can investigate, they can issue improvement or prohibition notices, and they can stop unsafe work from continuing. Duty holders can also be prosecuted, they can be fined, and in serious cases, individuals can face personal consequences. But it's not only about the like the enforcement. Poorly managed projects obviously lead to injuries, delays, additional costs, damaged relationships, maybe even insurance problems, and the refurbishment that becomes far more expensive than the deal sort of had originally allowed for. So you may now be thinking, how does a commercial client demonstrate that the project has been properly planned and managed? And this is where project documentation becomes important. It's important to have a construction phase plan before the construction phase begins, and it's the commercial client's responsibility to ensure that has been prepared. Now, when one or more contractor is involved, the principal contractor prepares that plan. Where there is only one contractor involved in the project, the contractor prepares that plan. So it's not your duty to write it, but as commercial client, it is your responsibility to make sure that the plan exists before construction work begins, and that's on every project, remember. So the construction phase plan should explain how health and safety will be managed throughout the construction phase, and importantly, how it will be communicated to others involved. However, whilst it is classed as the Bible on site, it's not the only important document that is involved. Depending on the project, there may also be pre-construction information, written duty holder appointments, risk assessments, method statements, competency checks, site inductions, which are a legal requirement, as I said before, and a health and safety file, to sort of have these as hard evidence on site. These documents aren't supposed to just be paperwork for anything, or when something's gone wrong. They should demonstrate that work has been done properly, it's been planned properly, that the risks have all been considered, and that everyone understands their responsibilities. So what exactly is a construction phase plan? What should it contain? And what other documentation should property investors, developers be asking for before construction work begins? We'll cover that in the next episode. So if you want to learn more about the documents required under the CDM regs, and you want to learn other construction insights that all investors and developers should understand, make sure you follow along, because we've got loads more lessons to come. I'm Will Burns from your Property Associates. This has been Building Better Investors. Plan better, build smarter, invest safer. I'll see you in the next one.